It all started with this little donut-like hole in the waters between the USA and Mexico, a seemingly innocent gap on the map that would spiral into one of the most bizarre maritime mysteries of our time. Little did the citizens of Mexico realize that this donut was about to roll them into a decades-long frenzy, searching desperately for something that may never have existed except on paper: the hunt for the mysterious island of Bermeja. But here is where it gets really strange. What was even more mysterious was the involvement of the USA in this entire puzzle. Were they the villains pulling strings from behind the scenes? Or were they victims of an elaborate hoax that fooled governments for centuries? The truth? Well, that's what we're here to uncover. So buckle up, because we're about to unravel each twisted layer of this maritime mystery, one shocking revelation at a time, only here on Mind Mystery. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Picture this. The year is 1994. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, finally comes into effect, completely reshaping how nations could claim oceanic territories. This wasn't just paperwork. This law defined critical maritime zones, like the exclusive economic zone and continental shelf rights extending beyond 200 nautical miles from a country's coastline. Suddenly, every nation with a coastline faced the same urgent question: how much of the ocean actually belongs to us? For the USA and Mexico, this question would ignite a treasure hunt that would consume both governments for decades. But the region they were fighting over wasn't just any patch of water, it was the Gulf of Mexico. Now, some boundaries between their exclusive economic zones had already been established in a 1978 maritime treaty, but pushing beyond those limits, that was where things got complicated. And here's why that complication would drive both nations to obsession. The Gulf of Mexico sits atop some of the most valuable hydrocarbon deposits on Earth. We're talking about enough oil and gas to power nations for generations. Whoever could claim legal ownership of these underwater territories would literally be sitting on liquid gold. Neither country was willing to simply walk away from that kind of wealth. This standoff created what became known as the Western Gap, a polygon-shaped area of contested waters that officials nicknamed the Donut Hole. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. In June 2000, both parties signed a temporary treaty, a kind of maritime ceasefire. Neither country could conduct any activities in the disputed area without explicit permission from the other. The moratorium would last 10 years, buying them time to figure out who had the stronger legal claim. And so began the most intensive treasure hunting era in modern maritime history. Both nations understood the stakes perfectly. Having any territorial claim in or near that disputed area would mean ownership of the surrounding region, the seabed, and all those precious natural resources lying beneath. More importantly, it would push back the other country's access to the Western Gap entirely. For Mexico, their beacon of hope had a name: Bermeja Island. But here's where our story takes its first mysterious turn. The very first time Bermeja Island appeared on paper was in a Spanish map from 1539, created by cartographer Alonso de Santa Cruz. But it was what happened the following year that really caught everyone's attention. In 1540, Spanish cosmographer Alonso de Chavez wrote these exact words. And I want you to listen carefully to this description. Bermeja, an island off the coast of Yucatan, lies at 23 degrees north latitude. It is west-northward of Cabo de San Anton, 14 leagues away. It is west-northwest of the Alacranes, 55 leagues away. It is northeast by east of Villarrica, 118 leagues away. This is a small islet, and from afar, it appears reddish. That word, Bermeja, it literally means reddish in Spanish. Someone had seen this island clearly enough to describe its distinctive color. After this initial documentation, Bermeja Island appeared on map after map for centuries. Cartographers placed it consistently at 22 degrees 33 minutes north and 91 degrees 22 minutes west, covering approximately 81 square kilometers. But then we encounter our first red flag, and it's a big one. In 1775, the Spanish army launched their own search expedition to locate the island. Captain Miguel Alguerete kept a detailed diary of their mission, and what he recorded should have been a warning to everyone who came after. According to his log, when they arrived at the supposed coordinates, the visibility was crystal clear. Perfect conditions for spotting land. Yet they found absolutely nothing. Now, you might be thinking, hey, this was 1775. They didn't have GPS or modern navigation equipment. Maybe they just got lost, right? That's exactly what modern Mexico thought when they decided to settle this question once and for all. In 1997, the Mexican government launched their own naval expedition, equipped with all the latest technology. They had precise coordinates, advanced navigation systems, and clear weather conditions. The result? Complete failure. No island anywhere to be found. But the Mexican government wasn't ready to give up. After all, the Gulf of Mexico is absolutely massive. We're talking about 600,000 square miles of open water. That's larger than the UK, Spain, Italy, and France combined. Maybe they were just looking in the wrong spot, right? So in 2009, they went all out. This time, they assembled a multidisciplinary team of experts from the Geography and Marine Sciences and Limnology Institutes of UNAM. They deployed the research vessel Justo Sierra and coordinated with aircraft to conduct aerial surveys of the entire region. This wasn't some casual weekend expedition. They used state-of-the-art bathymetry equipment to measure ocean depths down to the centimeter. The search covered an area of 10,488 square kilometers, with flights at altitudes ranging from 400 to 4,000 meters. They took 933 photographs, documenting every square meter of ocean. When the results came back, they were devastating. The bathymetric analysis revealed that the point where Bermeja was supposed to exist was actually 1,472 meters deep, with a completely flat seabed. No island. No underwater mountain, no remnants whatsoever. But here's the detail that should send chills down your spine. Based on their analysis of the seabed's geological age, they determined that no island had existed at that location for more than 5,300 years. 5,300 years. That means Bermeja Island couldn't have existed during recorded human history, let alone when those Spanish explorers were supposedly documenting it. With 4 separate search expeditions now complete, Mexico's hopes were officially dead and buried. But the elephant in the room was growing larger by the day. What exactly happened to an island that had appeared in official records, local folklore, and even the Mexican government's own territorial claims for centuries? The theories that emerged to explain this mystery range from plausible to absolutely wild. Let me walk you through each one, because they get progressively more insane. The first explanation that surfaced was straightforward. Maybe an earthquake or massive landslide had destroyed the island completely. But think about this logically for a moment. We're talking about an island spanning 81 square kilometers, that's roughly the size of Manhattan. For a natural disaster to completely obliterate something that large, leaving absolutely no trace above or below water, would require a cataclysmic event of biblical proportions. And here's the kicker. Where are the historical records of such a disaster? An earthquake powerful enough to swallow an entire island wouldn't exactly go unnoticed, especially in a region that was actively being explored and mapped. Several Mexican senators put it perfectly in their official statement. A force of nature able to sink an island does not take place without anyone noticing, much less so when it's sitting in an area with more than 22 billion barrels of oil reserves. 22 billion barrels. That's how much oil was potentially at stake. Maybe people speculated the island had gradually submerged due to rising sea levels over the centuries. Global warming, natural coastal erosion. These things happen, right? But this theory collapsed under scrutiny even faster than the first one. If rising seas had submerged Bermeja, what about all the other islands in the region? They were all still there, sitting exactly where they'd always been. And for an 81 square kilometer island to sink so completely that it becomes undetectable would require sea level changes that would have affected the entire Caribbean. We're talking about geological shifts that would have been impossible to miss. And now we arrive at the theory that sounds like it came straight out of a Hollywood thriller. The CIA blew up the entire island. I know how that sounds, but hear me out, because there's actually a twisted logic to this theory that made it spread like wildfire. Think about the timing. The moment Mexico started seriously pursuing their claim to Bermeja, they would have gained a massive advantage in the Western Gap dispute. An island in that location would have given them legal justification to claim vast underwater territories and all those oil reserves. For the United States, the economic implications were staggering. We're talking about potentially losing access to billions of dollars worth of natural resources. So the theory goes, the CIA secretly destroyed the island to prevent Mexico from using it as a territorial anchor. No island, no claim. Problem solved. But even this wild theory has serious problems. An island covering 81 square kilometers would require an absolutely massive amount of explosives to destroy completely. We're talking about an operation that would make the largest military demolitions in history look like setting off firecrackers. There's no way such an operation could have been conducted in secret. The logistics alone would have been impossible to hide from satellite surveillance, coastal observers, and maritime traffic. Which brings us to our final theory, and it's the one most experts now believe is the truth. Bermeja Island never existed. Not now. Not ever. The real mystery isn't what happened to the island. It's how it appeared on maps in the first place. What we're dealing with is what cartographers call a phantom island. A piece of land that exists only on paper, created through error, deception, or deliberate fraud. And here's where it gets really interesting. This might not have been an accident. Remember our original cartographer, Alonso de Santa Cruz, who first mapped Bermeja in 1539? There's a possibility he included this fictional island deliberately. This was actually a common practice among map makers of that era. They would insert fake islands, mountains, or other geographic features into their maps as a form of copyright protection. If someone copied their work, they could prove theft by pointing to these fictional elements. Think of it as a 16th century watermark. But here's the truly diabolical possibility. Maybe the Mexican government knew all along that Bermeja was fictional, but they deliberately kept it in their official territorial claims to complicate negotiations with the United States. By insisting that this phantom island existed, they could drag out discussions about the Western Gap for years, decades even, preventing American companies from accessing those oil reserves while Mexico figured out alternative strategies. It's a brilliant diplomatic stalling tactic if you think about it. So where does this leave us today? The Donut Hole Treaty that established the 10-year moratorium back in 2000 was extended twice and finally expired in 2021. Since then, there have been no public reports about new negotiations or agreements between the two countries. The treaty, just like the island of Bermeja, remains shrouded in mystery. But here's what keeps me up at night thinking about this case. What if we're all wrong? What if somewhere out there in those 600,000 square miles of the Gulf of Mexico, Bermeja Island is still waiting to be found? What if every expedition so far has been searching in the wrong coordinates? What if the island exists in that one spot where everyone missed looking? Or maybe, just maybe, the real mystery is still unfolding in government offices and corporate boardrooms, where the true battle for the Western Gap continues behind closed doors. Because when you're dealing with 22 billion barrels of oil, the story is never really over. What do you think happened to Bermeja Island? Was it a centuries-old map-making error, a deliberate deception, or something even more sinister? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed diving deep into this maritime mystery, make sure to subscribe for more investigations into the world's most puzzling cases. Trust me, we're just getting started. Until next time, keep questioning everything.